tough losses like this, opens a lot of people's eyes, and I feel like it opened our eyes tremendously. And it's just so much things you can learn from. I feel like no loss is really a loss. It's a learning moment. And so I always take the losses that we've took over the years to just learn from them and find ways to always get myself personally better and ways I can help the team get better and in order to help us prevail and win the games down the line.
And we're back with TigerNet Podcast. I'm your host, Matt, here with David Hood. And David, Clemson had just an absolutely rough start to the 2023 season. Talk a little bit about what we saw Monday night.
It's funny. We get there unbelievably hot, right? We arrive in Durham about 5 p.m., park in the parking garage near the stadium, check into the press box, go down to the field. Clemson comes out. Pretty normal, right? Everybody looks good in warm-ups. Everybody looks properly fired up, but not overtly so. And you think, gosh, it's good to have football back. It's good that, this is what we've been waiting on. This is what we've been looking forward to. And then the game started and it just all went downhill, right? Clemson did not play well in all three phases of the game, despite what Dabo Sweeney says. 200, that's great. Some of the passing yards in garbage time. Defense, I thought the defense, like I'll say this, defense played well through three quarters, holding them to 13 points. They sprung some big plays on the defense at times to kind of keep drives going. Clemson's offense, man, just shooting itself in the foot with the two inside the five turnovers, the other fumble, a first and goal they had, it didn't score, another fumble there. When they get inside the red zone, kind of reminiscent of that Tennessee game in the Orange Bowl. Can't finish drives, two kicks blocked. Remember BT Potter missing the kicks in the Orange Bowl? And, there's always a part of me that wonders if, look, Clemson's going to have a field goal kicker to win. So I say this tongue in cheek, but gosh, if you just didn't go, let's go for it on fourth down every time. Like, forget the kicker, let's just go for it. But I don't know that Clemson's offense is finishing well enough to go for it. If this was a Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne group, maybe, but they're just not finishing right now.
Yeah, you're right. They're not finishing. The offense looked pretty much where we left it in the Orange Bowl. I mean, it was the same story, making some decent drives, showing some progress, but just not able to finish it. You got Cade Klubnik not, hanging on to a ball too long on that zone read and it fumbles. You get Phil Maffa getting blasted by a defensive tackle coming straight through the line, and then there's a fumble and it's ran back. And I don't know the stat, but I have to imagine Clemson leads the nation in goal line fumbles over the past 12, 15 years, because it feels like ever since that 2011 West Virginia loss, that's been something we've seen. When we had it last year against Syracuse, we had it last year, in different games. So, I mean, it's one of those things that it just seems to constantly snake bite Clemson. And yeah, we saw it again this weekend.
It's funny. Dabo Sweeney says, yeah, we don't have a problem holding on to the ball in practice. And then kind of talking to somebody that's at practice a lot. Hey, do they have problems in practice? And it's like, yeah, they put it on the ground a good bit. And I watch them practice it. I see the coaches get out there with the boxing gloves, with the big pads. They're hitting them, they're giving them contested catches. And, it's coached. I know that much. And I know it's coached a lot. And yet it still happens. And, as bad as they played, as far as the turnovers, but you look at it, and you get 7 for 15 on third down. That's really good, right? One penalty for 5 yards. That's really good. There were some really good things that showed up out there that were just overshadowed by those bad ones. Every time I hear a coach, well, if you take away this, if you take away the two fumbles or the three fumbles, we did really well. I will tell everybody a really funny story that goes back to the Kevin Steele days. And Kevin, of course, Clemson's defensive coordinator back in the day. We go in on a Monday after Clemson had played Georgia Tech. And I can't remember who the quarterback was for Georgia Tech, but he ran for like, you know, 225 yards in that option attack. Georgia Tech runs for 510 or something crazy. And I remember asking Kevin Steele, about the run defense, and Kevin comes out and he goes, "Well, if you take away those 13 quarterback runs where he averaged 18 yards a carry, and you take away those running back runs where they averaged 22 yards a carry, we only, surrendered 4.1 yards per rush on those other 42." And we all just kind of sat there looking at him like, "What did you just say?" And it's like, but you can't take those away. That's part of it, right? And he got mad at us that day and threw a little bit of a fit and ran out. And then I went back into his office to watch a little bit of film, and he's like, "We practice it and we practiced it and we practiced it." And then he's like, "You understand, football. Where's my defensive tackle going here?" "Well, he's got the up back, coach." "Where's he going?" "Well, he's following the tight end down the seam." He's like, "Can you tell me why he's following the tight end down the seam?" I'm like, "I have no idea." Who's my defensive end got on this play?" "Well, he's got the quarterback. Let's hit the quarterback no matter what." "Where is he?" "Well, looks like he's following the field judge to the sideline for hot dogs." I don't know. And that was just kind of the way it was. So a little bit of levity there, but you can't take those plays away, and that just is for the people that are like, "Well, it's one game, and Clemson, if you erase those, you had a chance to win." All true. The concerning part of it is this is now a 2-3 year trend of head scratching losses with big turnovers, lack of explosive plays, lack of explosiveness in the offense. That's where the concern comes in.
You know, a big thing that people have talked about is before the game, Coach Sweeney made a comment that a lot of people found interesting. That he was asked about Garrett Riley coming in to run the offense, and he insisted he's coming in to run the Clemson offense. We've always collaborated, and that's what we're doing here. And yeah, this looked like the Clemson offense that we've seen for the past 3 years. There was some different things. There were some things that I really liked that I saw, but it didn't look completely different. And I kind of wonder, you know, with you're bringing in Garrett Riley, you're paying him a king's ransom. What changes is he being allowed to do to the offense?
Well, that's the interesting part of it is that I have a national television guy that I'm friends with who watched the game, and he goes, "I saw every one of TCU's games last year. I watched them all, and that offense we saw Monday night was not TCU's offense from last year. It was not SMU's offense." And you go, "Okay, well, guess what? It's not the offense that we saw in fall camp. Not that we got to see a whole lot in fall camp, because we don't get to see a lot. We'll get 5-6 periods, which means stretching. We'll get some special teams, and then maybe a little good on good, and then we're booted out. So we didn't get to see a lot, but I heard different people who were allowed to watch come out and go, "Yeah, you know what? It looks a lot different. There's motion. There's a lot of pre-snap motion. There's a lot of getting guys in the zone, a lot of middle of the field, a lot of tight end work." And then we get out there Monday night, and it's like, here we go. This is Clemson 2021 and 2022 all over again. And I asked somebody who would know, "Hey, it looks like Dabo's got the big Waffle House play sheet out there again. It's got the Waffle House menu, right? He does a lot of talking." I was told, no, Garrett Riley called the plays, but Dabo has never been shy about admitting that he gives a lot of input. And how much input is he giving? I don't know. Going to continue to dig on that. And that's why I think the next few weeks are really important, because you're not playing an NC State, you're not playing a Wake Forest yet. You're not going up against the Syracuse. You're not going on the road. You've got two home games against what should be inferior competition, right? But which is still competition. And man, you got to go out there and you got to fix this. You got to figure out a way to fix it. And that kind of leads me to a lot of the questions that I asked. And I called up a football person Monday, and it's like, hey, the reason it looks the same is because the problems are the same. The problem is that there's no speed on the outside. There's no speed at playmaker. Will Shipley, love that kid, right? Like heart of gold, uh, tough runner, tough player, great leader. Seems like he gets a little bit of a seam and he gets tripped up, can't finish it. You know what? Like, not elite speed is the reason for that. It's just the truth. Phil Maffa broke free the other night. You go, wow, if that's Travis Etienne, he scores. And Phil gets caught. Great kids, great running backs, not a lot of speed at the skill spots. It's just the way it is right now. How would I change it? Well, maybe take the red shirt off of Teton Kelly. Maybe see what Noble Johnson can do. You've already got Tyler Brown out there, but see what the kids can do. Adam Randall, Gator Armin pass out there kind of in the middle. Remember that one? Just some targets. Cole Turner didn't play well. Go see what the kids can do because it is. It's just a trend of lack of explosiveness because of a lack of really, top shelf playmakers. And again, man, I love Will Shipley. I do. I love that kid to death. I would take him on any team I would ever coach. But to say that he has elite speed, like a Travis Etienne or elite football speed, it's just not true.
Yeah, I mean that's the comment I've talked with a lot of people about who've said the same thing. Just don't have the player right now that has that breakaway speed that can make the difference when you get to that next level, like a Travis Etienne or a CJ Spiller or any of those. This week reading a lot of what the national folks had to say about Clemson, it felt like I was a teacher and I'd given an assignment and everybody copied off one kid because every article was pretty much the same on Clemson's got to use the transfer portal and they got to, Dabo's got to adapt and all that. And it was basically the same article written with different verbiage. And I just want to ask you, I think you said you have a little bit more insight into how Clemson can use the portal. What do we do going forward? Because that sounds like that's going to be a big thing with Clemson having to adapt to that.
So, what you have to understand is that when you bring in high school players, let's start here. Let's say that you sign 20 kids in a class, right? Here's your recruiting class, here's your 20. My wife Nikki and I've gone back and looked at this. I've looked at the numbers, talked to coaches. If you sign 20, there's a really good chance that 10 of those are not going to play significant snaps for you. If you sign 25, there's a good chance 12 or 13 of those guys are not going to work out or play. They're going to quit. They're going to get injured. They're going to just not play significant snaps. Different thing. They're going to leave via the transfer portal. They're going to transfer out, whatever. You're going to have about a 50% attrition rate. And so with Clemson, is that they have for forever and a day taken some of these smaller classes. And when you take the smaller classes, well, then you have a smaller group of people that are going to be able to make plays. And so, I went and looked at what Brent Venables did at Oklahoma. You look at what Dion did at Colorado and kind of redid their rosters. Now they did it a little bit different. And I hope that I have this right because I've just, read some Oklahoma sites. Dion's staff goes in and they don't contact a lot of those Colorado kids and say, you got to go. They just basically ignored them. And the kids were like, hey, do I have a scholarship? Do I not? And when they didn't hear from them, like the tight end I was reading about that wound up at Wisconsin, the way that I understand it, Brent and staff go in there and they identified 17, 18 kids and bring your parents in for a meeting. Let's talk about things. And it was, hey, you're always going to be a Sooner. You're always going to be a part of the Sooner family. We appreciate your efforts, appreciate you being here. You are welcome back at any time, but we don't see a path to playing time for you here. And what we would love to do is help you, if you still want to play this game, find you a spot, whether that's at Texas State, Southeastern Louisiana, Texas, like whoever, like wherever you think you want to go or you can go play, we will help you find it. And those kids took him up on it. And then he signed a little bit bigger of a recruiting class. He worked through the transfer portal. Something like, very early on, 47 players turned over. he had to do that at Oklahoma because, I think when he got there, watched them play defense last year, you go, they don't have any guys on that defense that would have maybe made, maybe two or three that would have made the two or three deep at Clemson's defense, right? He had to have that massive roster turnover in order to be competitive faster. Mike Norvell goes to Florida State, and he's got as many kids going out the door as he does coming in the door. Had to have kind of that massive roster turnover over a couple of years to get Florida State back competitive. Deion Sanders goes in there and goes, you know what? I'm just blowing the whole thing up. I'm getting rid of 62 kids, and I'm bringing in a lot of people, including Levante Bentley, former Clemson guy. And then he brings in some dynamic playmakers like Shador Sanders' son at quarterback, like Travis Hunter, who, let's face it, through week one, it's your Heisman favorite, right? Kids just, it's funny. I walked on the field and saw Chad Morris the other night, and Chad's son plays for TCU, threw an interception down there on the goal line. I'm like, that's not your kid's fault. Like that's just a great play. That the kid makes a great play. And so you have to turn the roster over. So what is happening is that in the past, well, you'd get a kid and you'd bring him in, and it might take 3 years to develop, and then you figure out he's not going to develop. So now you go back and find another high school kid, and you're constantly in kind of that 3 to 4 year cycle of who can I find? And Nick Saban figured a way around that. Remember back a decade ago, even people got mad at Nick. Well, this kid doesn't have a scholarship. He got to school and didn't have a scholarship. Nick pulled his scholarship away. Nick would find people he didn't think was going to play, and he'd be like, sorry, your 1 year scholarship is up. And he would go oversign, right? He'd sign 32 instead of 25. Constantly filling gaps in his roster, ahead of his time, like Nick Saban always is. So there's been different ways to go about it, but now teams can go for the quick fix and turn the roster over. Kids are leaving. Kids are taking advantage of it. So why can't the coaches? So you're turning your roster over a little bit faster, and the teams around you are getting better faster, and you're not getting better. You're staying the same. And I think that has been a huge problem at Clemson because let's take for example another great kid, Greg Williams, in-state kid, linebacker, gets here, long limbs, long frame. They move him to defensive end. He's here for 5 or 6 years, never plays a significant, down. Decides this year that he's done with football and he's going to move on. Great. And there's been some players like that. And so, whereas maybe a few years ago, you could have been like, hey, Greg, it's not going to work out here. You'll always be a part of the Clemson program. And you go out and you get a defensive end that can play, and not go get a high school kid that now you've got to go in and recruit him, spend all the money on recruiting, all the plane trips, all the visits, and you bring him in and you can plug him in, he plays right away. It's what these other schools are doing, and Clemson is keeping up with the cycle. So, after the game the other night, talking about the wide receivers, somebody texted me and said, Dabo should have gone and gotten a wide receiver or two from the portal. And I said, but what you forget is that Clemson didn't have any scholarships available. Remember, we're in July or June and there's 88 for an 85 scholarship limit. And the text that I get back was, yes, but he doesn't have to sign this kid or this kid or this kid. You should leave some open spots for some roster. Like you should go at the end of last year and go, you know what, our wide receivers lack playmaking ability. So I'm going to leave 2 spots open for transfer portal guys that we're going to go identify. And then you tell them, come in, get a Clemson degree, be a part of the Clemson family for forever. We want to keep you for your 2 years. Keeping a lot of these kids 2 years anyway. So that brings me to all of this. Your opponents that you're battling against, they're getting better faster. You're not. It's taking longer for you to turn your roster over because of high school players. Now, here's what Dabo has said in the past about fighting against that. He says that the transfer portal hurts high school players because it's a trickle down effect, right? So you had a lot of high school players that maybe they're not a Clemson guy, but man, they can go play at James Madison. They can go play at Stony Brook. They can go play at Furman, at Newberry, or wherever. So then you use the transfer portal and you're pushing guys out at this level. Now those guys are trickling down. High school players are not getting scholarships. And Dabo has fought against that. And it's a great fight, right? And then Dabo has also been one of these guys. And again, this is a credit, not a bad thing. Also been one of these guys that wants to graduate his player because he makes a promise to the parents. You bring your kid in, I'm going to turn him into a man. I'm going to turn him into a good husband and a good father. And I'm going to graduate your kid. He's going to have that education before he leaves. That's a good thing, right?
Absolutely.
And Dabo's like, I'm not going to push a kid out. We're the ones that made the offer. We're the ones that made the evaluation. And I'm not going to push a kid out just in the name of winning games. So that's where the rub comes in. You got a good man who's trying to do good things, who's trying to win his way, while the rest of college football is changing. And so for me, if I could go in and I could sit down in Dabo Sweeney's office and say, here's the way I do it. It's just me. Clemson still needs to be unique. Clemson still needs to be Clemson. Clemson still needs to graduate players, and Clemson still needs to be a family. But I would hold some of those spots because so like right now, even though you may know a guy's going to turn pro after the year, Barrett Carter, right? If he has a great year, he's probably going to go pro. But right now, Clemson's not recruiting for that spot. Dabo doesn't recruit for that spot until the player actually says he's leaving because he doesn't want to have too many players, right? But I would recruit and say, you know what? Every year I'm going to save 6 or 8 spots for transfers. I'm just going to save 6 or 8 spots, whether that's, I get them through, or for the transfer portal, whether that means I have to not sign 2 recruits or 3 recruits, because I know guys are going to leave at the end of the year. Guys are going to get to December. They didn't play a whole lot. They're going to be like, hey, the portal's open and I'm gone, right? You're going to get through spring practice and somebody's going to go, you know what? It's not working out for me. I'm gone. And Clemson has kind of been in that 6, 8, 9 range every year. And I think you just have to prepare your roster that way. And then you sit down with your coaches as early as October, November and go, where are our holes right now? Where have we lacked this season? Well, then let's go to the portal and get some guys. Where do we think we're going to be lacking once we lose our senior class? Where could we fill some holes? Well, you know what? I think offensive line looked pretty good the other night. I think the offensive line has a lot of good players. Not concerned about that. I think there's good wide receivers coming in, but I think there's some guys in the program that maybe are lacking. Go, you know what? Let's go get 2 wide receivers out the portal and have them join forces with Bryant Wesco and the other guy that's coming in. We're losing some experienced safety guys. Let's find one there. It just, hey, thin at linebacker right now, right? And if you lose both Barrett Carter and Jeremiah Trotter, then you're really thin on experience and thin on guys that can play. So go, you know what? There's a lot of kids playing who are really good, who can make it to the NFL, who would love to come to Clemson for a year or two. Get you a starting linebacker that can play. And again, it doesn't have to be 20, 22 people. It just needs to be 6 or 8 to complement the roster that you have.
I think you said it as well as anything. And I think that's where some people get lost is it's not simply about just looking in the portal. It's got to take some planning ahead. You've got to manage the scholarships. One thing that, has been brought up is that, Dabo loves to give walk-ons those scholarships when they're there. And that is great. I think that's awesome that we do that. You've got to account for this though, because then you end up with a bunch of guys on scholarship who are not producing on the field. You have guys that are great practice players on full scholarship, basically.
Yes. And again, that's another part of Dabo that I absolutely love. I love that part of him. I love the graduation part of him. I love the family part of him. I love the fact that he's going to make, boys into men, all commendable things. But you're almost kind of at a crossroads where you go, how can we keep that, but also still win at a high level? Because really, you're playing to win, right? That's why all the money's been spent. If they come to IPTAY in 3 or 4 weeks and go, "Hey, IPTAY people, we know you've given a lot, but now we want to redo the suites in Death Valley. So we're going to ask another 5 million from you." Well, you know what? 8-4, 9-3, to 3 loss, 4 loss seasons, people aren't going to have as open a pocketbook as if you're winning, as if you're making the college football playoff. And I think that it's a little bit of a transition right now, and it's going to be interesting to see how Dabo responds to this. And the good news is he's always responded. He knew that Billy Napier was not the guy. Went and got Chad Morris. Knew that Kevin Steele wasn't the guy. Knew that Vic Koning wasn't the guy. Went and go and got Kevin Steele. Figured out Kevin Steele's not the guy. Went out and got a guy by the name of Brent Venables. Figured out that Chad and Tony could work out well together after Chad left. That worked out, right? Figured out last year needed to make a change. Went out and got Garrett Riley. So he's made changes, and people think that Dabo's against NIL and Clemson isn't an NIL team. I've said this before on here. Clemson is one of the 5 most aggressive college football programs when it comes to NIL. I'm gonna throw something out there that might blow your mind. Do you realize that Clemson and Tiger Impact is getting closer to the point to where every scholarship football player gets $40,000?
I did not realize that.
How about that? Clemson is a very active NIL participant. Now, where we're different is you see Ohio State's quarterback go, "I'm driving a Bentley." Jake Klubnik's not driving a Bentley, right? You see, Quinn Ewers at Texas. Well, they gave me 4 pancake houses and a car. You're not seeing that kind of an investment, but Clemson is very active in NIL. So we're close there. And so I think in this day and time, you just can't take the time with the amount of attrition that you have in a recruiting class. You just can't take the time to try and rebuild every year that many spots when you can say, "Hey," and there may be a year where you go, we got to go get 10. And then there may be a year where you go, "You know what, everything worked out. We only need to get 2, maybe 5," right? But there may be a year where you're hit hard with injuries and hit hard with transfers, and you go, "I go get 10." Then who knows? But I think that is in this day and age, especially with the advent of the 12-team playoff and wanting to make that with the ascension, and it is an ascension of Florida State. Yes. You look at that Florida State team, Jordan Travis. All right, sure, the dude's 55 years old, right? I think he's actually older than Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. He's just been around for forever. And you give him that offensive line and those wide receivers. You see Keon Coleman the other night. I don't know if Keon Coleman, some people said maybe a little bit of a bad attitude. I don't know if Clemson would have gone after Keon Coleman, but he had to fly over to Clemson to get to Tallahassee, right? And you say, can they help? They can. And Florida State's a pretty good team. I also think that after watching LSU, that they're kind of a hot mess right now. The offensive line was bad. Florida State had a lot to do with it. Running game not there. That quarterback, I'm not real sure that they have a downfield passing game with him. So pump the brakes on how great Florida State is. They looked really good though, and it's not going to surprise anybody. It's going to surprise you if the line comes out and Florida State's a double-digit favorite in Death Valley.
Not at all. Yeah.
Would you have ever thought that?
Not before Monday night, no.
Right. And so, and it's funny that so then we go back to this whole team speed thing. And I had somebody that works for ESPN just send me a message yesterday. It was like, "Hey, off the record here, um, Clemson lacks playmakers. They just lack speed everywhere." And the O line did fine, but man, it's a little different than it has been in the past. And he even said he had concerns about K. Klubnik, that maybe the quarterback's not who we thought he was. And I'm like, I hate hearing that from a college football analyst who obviously watched the game, and said, "Man, this is what I'm seeing." And so uh, Clemson's got some holes right now. And but I texted somebody yesterday, and the good news is that it's probably going to be a night game in Death Valley against Florida State. Dabo gets to drive the Roy bus in the lead up to that, with Clemson being an underdog, chip on their shoulder. And this is still a talented football team, still a talented defense, still talented players on offense if you don't have the game breakers. And can they pull off the win? Absolutely, they can. If my prediction was written today, probably not. Not going to have Clemson as the winner. But that just kind of comes back to our transfer portal conversation. And Dabo says, "Well, we didn't lose that game because of the transfer portal." He's absolutely right. But you could have won it if you'd have had a few. One of the college guys that I trust the most says people usually don't win football games, people lose them. In other words, it's the team that makes the most mistakes is going to wind up losing. And that's what happened to Clemson. That can happen when Clemson plays Florida State. Florida State can make the most mistakes. Who knows? Um, I just know that the rest of this season can't go on the transfer portal right now. It's closed, right? Not going to fire all your coaches. I came up with a little bit of a stat this week that that 2016 team that won against Alabama and Tampa, 206 combined years of experience between 9 coaches as full-time assistant on the field coaches in the college or pro ranks. One of them had even been a head coach. Now there's 10 on field coaches that you had out there Monday night, 57 combined years. Only 19 on offense. And you go, that's a lot of youth and a lot of learning on the job, right? And so, I texted a retired guy, and how important is that? Well, it's important in that, the older guys know what buttons to push. They know how to motivate people. They've been there, they've seen it, they've done it all. And at that level, it's less about X's and O's in a lot of ways, and it's more about relationships and pushing the right buttons with talented players. And so that's a concern. So this season, I know Clemson fans are selling their tickets and they're done. I think it's fascinating to me. It is fascinating. I can't wait to see how this flushes itself out. Can't wait to see what happens. Is this, as ESPN says, is this a 4 or a 5 loss team? Or are they going to find a little something? Are they going to find a spark and play really well down the stretch? Can the coaches find the spark with these kids? And then what's going to happen at the end of the year? Will they change? Will they decide, let's open up the portal a little bit more and let's do a little bit better with the roster management from a standpoint of we know we're going to have losses, and hey, if we still wind up with too many, then sometimes you have to tell a kid sorry. I don't know. I just think it's going to be a fascinating rest of the year.
I agree, and that's to your point. It's nice to talk about all these portal things, and I think these are things that going forward Clemson has to address. But look, this team is just way too talented to write this season off as a wash. I mean, I think there's a lot of potential with this team. I know it sounds like the team has, at least in interviews, is talking that way. I mean, right now, no, I'm not saying that Clemson looks like a playoff team in any capability, but you never know, and they're certainly not out of that question. And you really want to see this team figure it out. And I think these next 2 weeks against lower competition, and with as you mentioned earlier, maybe taking the red shirt off. The good thing is you get 4 games with these guys. If you still want to redshirt them, let some young guys get some burn early. Let's see what we've got and see if maybe you find that explosive player that is the difference maker. Maybe you've got somebody on your roster, but this next 2 weeks I think can be really critical for Clemson turning this thing around.
No doubt. And are there things that I would like to see? Sure. Yeah, defensively, I would love to see, a little bit more of the attack and not laying back. Offensively, want to see him still try and open it up. I think Cade Klubnik, I think part of his problem is the fact that that was his second start. People forget that. And people forget he's not Trevor Lawrence or Deshaun. Those are generational guys, but Cade has a chance to be a really good quarterback. He just needs playing time. He just needs to get out there and get hit, and he just needs playing time. And I'd like to see him open it up for the kid, let him take some shots, and you know what? You may have to live with some turnovers, You may have to live with some decisions or whatever, but go out there and realize that you can take some chances the next few weeks. Open it up offensively, defensively, and just see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, you've got nothing to lose at this point, so hopefully we'll see some improvement over these next 2 weeks.
Well, I know that we'll talk probably again next week, and we'll definitely have a lot to talk about because I'm kind of hearing some whispers that maybe some kids are going to be turned loose out there. We'll see. I don't know. But it'd be interesting to see him. I would love to see more Tyler Brown. That is for sure at wide receiver. And I would love to see more TJ Parker out at defensive end. Like that kid played pretty well. He's a big body out there. I'd like to see some of these defensive linemen play. I really would.
Really liked what I saw about TJ Parker on Monday. I mean, that was definitely one of the bright spots on that defense.
And you got more coming. That's why I say I'd like to see him kind of turn loose. Maybe not so much on the 3-man front. If I got those many, studs on the defensive line, I'm turning those dogs loose. I'm like, hey boys, start barking and go get them, and less of that. Just kind of sit back and wait. But that's just me. Nobody's ever paid me $1 to go, coordinate a college defense. I understand that. I say that all the time. Nobody's ever paid me $1 to go coach, but I know what I'd like to see. And I've, been around it enough to know, what works, what worked for Brent, what's worked for Clemson in the past. So again, going to be a fascinating stretch. September's going to be fascinating. Remember, not only do you have Florida State, but end up the month with a tough trip to Syracuse, which even the great Clemson teams don't seem to play well up there. This isn't a great team. Okay, that the team always seems to sell out. So this is going to be a fascinating month, and I can't wait to see how it ends up.
I see a lot of promise. Everybody, we kind of took in the loss. Give credit to Duke. They came out and they balled out. But obviously we seen this as a opportunity to get better. Everybody kind of we're buying in, continue to buying in. Seniors talk to us, guys like Maskell and XT, saying we had a group chat, had a talk, and saying that if we're going to continue to make the season better, we got to lock in more, do the extra. So we all had a self-awareness check after the game, and we're going to continue to do good.